because it's all about the hustle, right? I mean, you need you need to pay your bills,
Right.
So you're working while you're building and creating, which is a great way of doing it.
You got to.
Yeah.
You got to. I mean, it don't get me wrong, it burns a lot of energy.
Oh yeah.
But I mean,
you're young.
Exactly.
That's the time to do it.
Yeah.
I have no energy anymore. I'm 40.
Facts.
So what's you?
Hey, I'm right behind you, man. All right.
The Vegas Forward podcast delves into the lives of the people in our community, uncovering not only what they do, but who they are. Business may keep our city strong, but it's the individuals that continue to create, innovate, and push Vegas forward. All right. Welcome to the Vegas Forward podcast. Today we have Josh Molina, the owner and founder of Makers and Finders. Thanks for coming on, Josh.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. I want to kind of kick things off by, telling me a little bit about your upbringing, like where you're from. Do you have siblings, your parents? Give me a little bit of background about that first.
Yeah. So I'm a middle child, right?
Okay.
I have two other siblings, both brothers, older and a younger brother. I was born in New York City.
Oh, cool.
First generation Colombian American. So both my parents immigrated to New York from Colombia in like the early 80s, late 70s. In New York, I was there for the first like 12 years of my life, did elementary school there, had a lot of family over there. We're kind of a collectivistic kind of family, really big group of cousins, aunts, uncles. So the kind of one migrated over to Las Vegas, and then slowly
everyone comes out, right?
Everyone came out. So that's always good,
Yeah.
So
Where'd you live in New York?
Maintain the family connection in Flushing, Queens.
Oh, cool. Nice. That's awesome.
Queens.
Yeah, I actually grew up in New Jersey, so I'm
nice.
Not too far away. But I got some good friends that live in Brooklyn and stuff, and it's awesome to say. Do you have fond memories of it, or?
Yeah.
No,
I have a ton of memories, and I still have family over there, and I still go back. I mean, it's New York City. It's like super
awesome.
inspiring, and energetic city. So it's always a good place to kind of hit the reset button creatively. But a lot of great memories, friendships that still I still have to this day. One of my best friends from New York just had a baby last week, so
cool.
We still stay connected. She's up in the OC, but it's definitely something that I'm rooted in that for sure.
Yeah, New York's such a great town. I have a good friend, like I said, that lives out there, and I have another friend that just went. And he's like, it's amazing. Like you can turn down any block, and there's a phenomenal restaurant, or like even a hole in the wall kind of spot, that has like bomb ass hot dogs or like whatever.
For sure.
It's and I always wonder how people compete out there, because it's just like an endless supply of just different places to go and things to do.
Yeah.
Which is cool, But so when your family came out to Vegas, like who came out first? It was your parents, or?
So it was I had an aunt and uncle that had already moved here first, and then I think it was like a year after that we followed. We stayed literally the five of us stayed in my uncle's bedroom the first 4 months that we were in Las Vegas. All five of us crammed up in this little bedroom in the house in the east side that my uncle lived at. And so that was that for sure for me, that whole transition from like, I was like 12 years old, like leaving everything I knew, and then,
all your friends.
Yeah. And then, I mean, this was back in 1998 and so, just like the memories are so vivid because, we were laying out a map on the floor, plotting out our cross country trip, highlighting the routes and talking about all this and brainstorming how we're going to do it. And then actually leaving and like, the bon voyage and looking in my looking in the rear view mirror,
movie,
like,
right?
oh my gosh. But definitely like a very impactful, I think, moment of my life that I think somehow comes back into play later on.
It all does, which is interesting. Yeah, that's awesome. So, what did your parents do when they moved here?
So my parents are just, my dad retired as a groundskeeper at UNLV. So my mom was in just admin HR for in medical. So she worked at hospitals, just that workhorse secretary that just paper pushing and incredible at what she does. So she wasn't able. It was pretty easy for her to find work here. She ended up getting a job, a few months after we arrived to Vegas at UMC.
Okay.
And she left UMC in 2017 to go and help me open the downtown Summerlin location. So she was there for like 20 years. or
Wow.
a little less. Yeah.
That's awesome. And where'd you go to school out here?
I went to I went to Votech for the first couple, which I think it's now called something else. I think it's like Secta. And then after Votech, I was kind of a problem child in high school. And so I was kind of rebellious and doing my thing. And I ended up going to, kind of finding my way through the help of one of my best friends. He put me on to this college high school. Right. It was like summer vacation after sophomore year in high school at Votech. And I wasn't doing too good, like, getting into the wrong crowd, like not taking school seriously, had a shitty GPA. And then he's like, hey, check this out. Like, it's like college for free.
Yeah.
They even pay for your books, your tuition, and you only have to be a junior or senior to sign up. And I was like, okay, well, I really aimlessly just said, okay, went over there, heard about it. So it's Nevada State High School, which now, the Hawks, Dr. John and Wendy Hawk, they just retired actually, but they started this charter school that was a dual credit kind of deal. And cool. They started at Nevada State College up in Henderson. And I went in and I finished my high school diploma there. Nice. And was able to walk out with, junior credits almost.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then I saw you went to CSN and then Nevada State College.
I went to Nevada State College for the high school program, and then I transferred to UNLV.
Got it. Okay.
And then I graduated with my BA in psychology. But then I went to CSN after I graduated because I wanted to become a firefighter. So I took my EMT basic and did
interesting.
That. Yeah.
Okay. And so how far did you get along with the firefighting?
I did the basic class. I did my ride-alongs. I loved it. And then, I did my my physical, my written, got all the way up to the oral, the interview portion, and that's as far as I got. And I just lost steam. I like to do a lot of different things, and that just fizzled.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Just random.
Sounds like my college. I grew up in New Jersey, so I went to Rutgers, and then transferred from Rutgers to University of Arizona.
Oh no!
And then just partied too much and got nothing done.
That'd be
so then I transferred to UNLV. So and then the rest is history. But just like your family, I'm Greek, right? So like we have similarities in the culture. And
right.
Once I moved out, then my mom moved out, then my cousin, and it's like everybody moved out. Yeah. So it's like kind of the unit always stays together, right?
Yeah,
which
is
important,
cool. Man.
It is,
so. Yeah.
It's nice having family around.
Yeah.
So So UNLV, you did psychology? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I got my psych degree in 2010. I mean, I was 7th grade. Mr. Palucci, I still remember that up in Votech. He put me on to and I've always been like really like, mindful person, kind of introspective. So like the idea of like why we act the way we act always like
it's very interesting.
Me.
Yeah.
So after 7th grade, I'm like, I kind of just, I took a humanities class, like, and he went over some like Psych 101, and after that, I was in.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go all the way and do forensic psychology, go to grad school. I took my GREs and everything after I graduated. I did well in college, and just
Where did the turn go in the different like?
It's weird, like typically most people that work in restaurants, they start in restaurants young and they stay just because it's like But for me, it was different. Like I started in restaurants later on, like when I was in my early 20s.
Where did you work?
Worked at a few different spots, Herbs and Rye. So
Nick Tolley.
Yeah. So he was really helpful, like good mentor early on. Yeah. Central, which is now closed. It was at Caesar's Palace.
Okay.
Just like a French chef kind of deal, and that fizzled. Where else did I work at? I worked at Caesar's, Firefly. I worked for a little bit too. Yeah.
The one in Paradise.
Yeah, the old one.
Yeah. Before, we won't talk about what happened.
Yeah. So, I did a little tour, but from UNLV and kind of going in that academic route, I mean, I loved it, and I think my head wasn't in it. I took the GRE, didn't do as well as I wanted to.
Yeah.
And at that point, like my entrepreneurial spirit was like really kicking in. I was like, and that's where, I'm kind of seeing the food coffee scene, and at the 2012, 2013, I'm like, man, I'm looking at New York City. I'm seeing all these cool, like, South American inspired restaurants, trendy coffee shops. And that's where I just shifted gears and kind of started focusing my energies in like conceptualizing this idea that I had.
Yeah, it's similar. Again, my background too, because my uncle owned restaurants, my grandfather too, and so it's great experience. And that's what I thought I wanted to do. You know, I went to UNLV, to hotel school, and never even graduated. I had like 2 classes to take. Sorry, Mom. But similar. I mean, it teaches you a work ethic, but it's an oddly addicting industry. Yeah. Once you get into it, it's like, man, it's cool. Because you're a people person. So am I. It's like. It's all about that, the relationships with your coworkers and the customers, and it's always action, all the time, which is kind of fun. So, were you working in the restaurant business while you were at UNLV, or?
So I was in sales before. Okay. So I did insurance. That was like my first industry. I got
State Farm, right?
State Farm, yeah. Okay. So I got taken in by another entrepreneur, Eric James. He was, really inspiring kind of figure, because I was really young, 16, 17, when he brought me in. And, back then I had like my resume, and I was going on Craigslist and faxing out my resume to all these fax numbers. And he called me, hires me on the spot. And, his whole thing, and this is later on, he told me, he's like, his thing is, finding young people to kind of mentor and mold them into this like business mindset. Sure. And that's exactly what he did for me. One of my good friends, Davin, who's now a lawyer, and really, really fundamentally important for my professional growth.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I think I've seen his billboards. Did he?
Did
he do billboards?
Yeah.
I think I remember.
Yeah. If you've ever been on Maryland Parkway, you've probably seen the guy.
I have. Yeah. That's awesome.
So he was cool and really helped me. But so I got into the insurance tip and got my licenses. Like, I was 17. I'm like, I want to get my licenses. I'm, always really hungry. So I was studying for my licenses. And then a few days after I turned 18, I took my test. I had to wait till I was 18 to legally. And I was able to pass. And I started doing really well. I think I'm kind of naturally a salesman, people person.
Yep.
And I was able to kind of progress. And I ended up, being like the top salesman on the West Coast.
Wow.
For Jen Sias, who's got a couple offices still. I still keep in touch with her. She's great, and another young, hungry entrepreneur. So it was good. I was kind of found myself around those people in my come up. So it was very helpful because, like, I'm a very observative person. I like seeing people behave and thinking about why they act like that. What are they doing that for? So I think it was very, I'm grateful to be able to have those experiences.
How long did you do that for?
From 17 to 20, until I was like almost 22, 20. So like 5 years.
Yeah. And what made you get out of that industry?
You said it earlier, man. Yeah. We're people.
You get sucked back in.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like you can't sit at a desk for too long.
Yeah.
Like, you could do 2 hours and, bang out a bunch of work, but we need 2 hours where most people need 8. And it just doesn't, like, after 2 hours, you're like, all right, I got to do something.
I'm done. Yeah.
So I just wasn't, I wasn't a 9-to-5er, office setting kind of person. That's when I started exploring restaurants, and I had this kind of like this calling, I guess. You know, I'm like, I like restaurants. I like going to them. I'm intrigued by them. Yeah. And I got my foot in the door at Herbs and Rye, and then started kind of moving up.
What'd you do at Herbs?
Serving.
Okay, cool.
I was a bar back. I mean, I've done it all. I've been bar back, bartender, server, managed, so a little bit of everything. Expo. I love Expo. That's my little thing.
Yeah. So was that the last job you had before you started the Makers and Finders, or?
No. Oh, no. My last job was a Morton restaurant called Crush at MGM. It's still there. Okay. Yeah, so that was my last job. I worked at Crush at the MGM up until 2 weeks before we opened Makers in the Arts District. So when we were building out the location, and I didn't, given that, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Yeah. It's my first build out.
Nobody does.
Right? Yeah. And I'm like running to to build out Makers, deal with contractors, like from like 7 a.m. and then running to like the LVAC on Maryland, just to go take a shower and then run to MGM and work a shift there. And I did that like right up until we opened Makers.
That's a total entrepreneur story right there. Because it's all about the hustle, right? You need to pay your bills.
Right.
So you're working while you're building and creating, which is a great way of doing it.
You got to. Yeah. You got to. I mean, it don't get me wrong, it burns a lot of energy.
Oh yeah.
But I mean,
you're young. Exactly. That's the time to do it. Yeah. I have no energy anymore. I'm 40.
Facts.
So what's you?
Hey, I'm right behind you, man. All right.
once you hit my age, you're like, energy's not there. I have two kids too. They take all the rest. Whatever energy I have is gone. Yeah.
Are they young or
4 and 2?
Oh man.
Yeah. So we're in the thick of it. It was worse about a year ago.
Yeah.
During COVID too, when it was shut down with 2 kids running around, that was fun. Yeah.
I got a 4-year-old. He just turned 4 last week. Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you. But I like this age. Like now he's kind of like changing a little bit. 4 is a little different than 2.
It's a great age. I got a haircut last night with my son, and it's so cool. You know, cool. I was like, we'll get the same cut. You know, so it's fun. They're like your little buddy.
Yeah, you know? Yeah, and that's what it kind of like it feels like right now. It's like he's like my boy. Like, oh, let's go. I get excited. I'm like, we're going to the aquarium, or I'm like planning out like day trips or something with him because it feels like a buddy.
Yeah, it's tough. The second one, you gonna have another one, or
I want to. I'm not married, so I don't know. We'll see. Not in the plans right now. So
the second one is like my buddy and I was joking around. It's like the growth isn't exponential. It's like it feels like you go from 1 to 4. You know what I mean? And the second one's
like
always
that,
harder.
I'm not gonna do.
Yeah, the second one's always harder too.
Really?
Oh yeah,
harder.
Oh yeah, because you get like when you first have a kid, the shock is like I remember leaving. The weirdest thing is leaving the hospital. Right? You got this little infant in the back and you're like, is it still alive when you're driving home? Like that's a bizarre experience, and learning to be a parent is challenging. But for some reason that second kid is always more difficult than the first one. Yeah.
I've heard the opposite.
Really?
I've heard
I hope I'm wrong. Well, you have to.
I hope you're wrong too. No offense, but I mean, we'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, more of anything is usually a little bit tougher to deal with. So I can see that. For
I
sure.
hear you. So jumping back to when you were, kind of transitioning over, did the doors open and you quit the job, or when did you leave your previous employment?
Same thing. Or the Crush or so Crush, I just I basically knew that I was not going to be able to, like, mentally and physically I wouldn't be able to work a job and then try to run my own place.
Of course, yeah.
So basically, like, I came in with my ex business partner at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to have when we opened Makers, she helped me open it. We've been friends since high school, college.
Okay.
So when we came up, we're like, hey, well, we're just gonna manage the floor. Like, this will, we'll be the managers, and we have experience. And so we'll just run point here and pay ourselves a small salary. We paid ourselves
peanuts, right?
Oh my God, it was like $600 every 2 weeks. I'm like, but whatever. We didn't care.
Yeah.
We were hustling. Yeah. And thankfully, we took the dive, and we were, instantly. We were able to be, generating revenue and
that's amazing,
covering overhead. So, and reinvesting.
Yeah. Which is what you have to do. Yeah. Keep building.
Because I built a backward ass restaurant. Yeah. That first one, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So the last 5 years I've just been like backtracking, patching shit up, moving things that aren't where they belong. But
yeah. And you and I were chatting a little bit before we jumped on, and it's like, it amazes me because I remember first starting Adlava, and as a young guy like you were, and I was so scared to get my first lease, and it was just an executive suite. It was like the size of a cubby hole, right? And I was like, man, I'm gonna do this, and I barely have any clients. Like, how am I gonna pay it? You know? But for you, I have even more admiration because you're not just like, we're a service business. We just need a little, it's easy to get out of your rent. But you were not only paying rent, but you had to do the build out, deal with contractors. You have to pay for inventory, hire employees. I mean, tell me about that journey and what that was like, going through that process.
Yeah. You were, like you said, we were chatting before, and like I told you, I was like, where I am now, like I would be too nervous and too skeptical to do everything that I
know too much.
Yeah, I know too much now. Yeah. And so, but it was a really, unique journey that first time opening up that restaurant. Like you said, it was something that, I was always curious. So every restaurant I worked at, I was always asking questions to, like, the chefs, the managers, like, why do you do it like this? Why do you do it like that? And so, but that would never prepare you to deal with contractors, deal with, AC units and, load calculations for this or whatever. You don't go to school for that.
No.
So, that first one, I mean, we were barely able to kind of navigate opening our doors and then having, like, at least some working capital. Like, it was literally at the last moment. Yeah. So we had like, our working we had, I think, like 30 30 some odd thousand in the bank. And that was like,
it.
hey, this was it. This
Yep.
is what we're going to open with. And then we had a lag after our contractor got us a certificate of occupancy. That's when they're like, okay, we're done. You got your C of O. Now, go ahead and open. But we had some issues with opening there's so many other things that could get in the way.
Yeah.
And so they're like, hey, we need the final payment. And it was like $30K. So that would have left us with like $2,000. And, that was an interesting little 2-week period because I had to then, I'm like, I have to go find $30,000 because I need to pay them and I need the working capital. So, I was able to, I had a friend of mine who I've known for a long time. He works at Nevada State Bank. And I was able to just like scrounge up this like prime line because I've always maintained my credit. Any good entrepreneur knows the importance of credit. Sure. So I had credit, not anything significant at the time, but I had my installments and my revolving kind of all moving. And then, I was able to lock in this prime line, which is just like an open line of credit. And I was able to get just enough and pay my contractor. Yeah. And that was, and we were able to get our doors open. But man, it was super difficult.
Scary probably, right? Too?
Yeah. Very scary. Yeah.
So let's kind of backtrack a little bit too, and tell me a little bit about Makers and Finders, like the concept. I'm really interested too in like, it's because it's a really beautiful venue and like how you came up with the decor and like just the style of the venue. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about
that. I think it's definitely reflective of like kind of me and what inspires me. Like I get inspired by a lot of different things, and I feel like I'm pretty eclectic. Like and that was definitely the inspiration behind the look, but really conceptually speaking, the driver was like my culture, right? So like when in New York City, I'm Colombian American, right? Yeah. The highest density of Colombians that live in the United States are in New York City. Yeah. So I was very much a majority over there. Yeah. And so I grew up like with all of these, these arepas, these empanadas, these things that I grew up with, making them by hand, eating them, Sunday morning. And so I had all these very vivid memories and appreciation for these things. And so migrating to the West Coast where there's more Central Americans, Mexican, Salvadorian. Sure. So when I got here, I was like, man, there's an underrepresentation of what I love. Oh yeah. And so that was a big factor for like doing the South American influence kitchen. Right? Okay. Yeah. So, and then as far as like the concept, the name, it just goes back to what I was telling you, like, coming to Vegas, we were saying earlier, like New York City, talking, I think before we got on, and like how inspiring it is, how, you can walk down anywhere. The avenue. Yeah. And there's something right, hole in the wall, something incredible. Well, Vegas, that's changing, but it's not walkable. No, No, yeah. And it's very much like a transient city. So just like coming in, and that really impacted me, I think, at a core level, and I didn't realize that until after the fact. But it was kind of this conflict and this like was coming out in like these creative ways of like creating this space that's like urban and feels like it's like somewhere in New York City or somewhere in LA or whatever, wherever you're from or wherever it triggers a memory from. And so that was the decor, and the vibe was very much like I wanted to feel like I was in a city, like this place where you just walk up.
And it does. I mean, I've been there. It's very unique. In fact, I never heard of you guys. Like, this is years ago. Yeah. And I had a meeting with someone from the city, and they're like, oh, meet me at Makers and Finders. I was like, all right. And when you walk in, it just has this very unique vibe, and I was talking to Delaney, who's a big coffee fan, and she was saying that there's a story even behind, like, you guys have like Greek tiles that mean something. And what was the other, I forget what else she mentioned, but there's a couple things that you guys have in decor that has like a meaning behind it. Maybe,
some Easter eggs and there's the Greek tile, like Delaney said, kind of that homage to like the New York City, like, the coffee cup,
the Greek coffee cup. Yeah, that's the best. Yeah.
And we actually recreated our version, and now, our 8-ounce, like little small or small to-go cups are our version of that cup. Yeah.
Was it Kronos? What was it? No, that's the cheese brand.
Anthora.
Yeah.
Anthora. Yeah. But so there's a lot of that was a big inspiration.
That's cool.
I wanted to like drop little things in there that just kind of pay that tribute.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so you, when you were working at your other job, like you were just like brainstorming ideas, and did you travel a lot to kind of inspire yourself? Like how did you come up with the concept?
Yeah, no, traveling was a big part of it. New York City.
Yeah.
I drew a lot of inspiration from a few places out in New York City. I went out and visited them.
Yeah.
I kind of want to tell this story, but it's kind of like this.
Tell it.
I actually just told this story for the first time in years because it's kind of like this. So there's a spot in Hell's Kitchen in New York City. I won't say the name, but
okay.
it's an empanada spot, very popular. And you know, me and my ex-business partner, we went out to New York City with this idea of like, you know, seeing what's out there, seeing what we can get inspired to create, the makers and finders. And I told her, I'm like, so we go into the spot, we have a great time. Like, man, these empanadas are delicious. Like, I love these. Like, I would love to know more about them and how they make them, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, after a few glasses of sangria, I'm like, why don't we, because we were in college, she was still in college at the time. So I'm like, why don't we go to the library, create like this generic syllabus and say that we're students and that we have a project where we have to like film, you know, a video, kind of a Q&A with a good business, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we did that. And so we went to the freaking library, got this whole thing like so shammed up, and then went over there, and like they were a little kind of skeptical at first, but then like we had a mic, we had a little video, and we did it, and you know, he was still there, but it was funny because it was like very covert, you know what I mean? But we were, you know, that was one of the few things that we did while trying to like gain some.
Did you ever go back to the restaurant?
No, but I follow them on social media. I don't know if they'll
That's
ever
such a cool story.
Yeah. But,
so is that inspired the recipes that you do now, or?
Yeah, like the style, like the empanada offerings. Like I really believe that you know, in empanadas, like I think it's a really you know, it's heading to like a more mainstream appeal, and I kind of felt that a long time ago, which is why it became such a big part of our menu as well. But yeah, so New York City, LA, went to a few places there, and just like looking for the South American food from there. Yeah. And then for coffee, you know, I got put onto specialty coffee right around like 2012, just, you know, seeing these coffee shops in like Japan, South Korea, East Coast, like, you know, the United States was very behind the specialty coffee.
Oh, without doubt,
comparative to like Australia or like all these other
places. I mean, it's huge. I mean, it's all the Asian coffee shops out here are pretty awesome. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was a big inspiration, and just kind of seeing what they're doing, how they do it, and then and that in the very beginning, before we opened Makers, we've gone through a few different names before we ended at Makers, but we were gonna do a food truck, and that was our whole thing back in 2012. And so we met some investors that my ex-business partner knew from, you know, just rich regulars from Firefly. Okay. And we spoke to them, and we were talking to them, and they gave us some really good feedback. They're like, hey, like, you know, I don't know what empanadas are, and which most people don't, especially then at that time. And they're like, we need something else. And that's when we went back to the drawing books, and we're like, we need something to another equally
that people are familiar with.
Right. Yeah. And that's how we landed on coffee and specialty coffee, and you know, these methods that you can brew coffee, and these origins that have, you know, like wine. It's like you find
it's just
nuts.
like wine. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. How'd you guys source the beans? Because I mean, that's like that's another thing we're talking about offline, is like, you know, it's almost like Chick-fil-A. If their chicken sucked, you know, what do they got? You know? Yeah. And as a coffee shop, I mean, I've been to some that are, I don't want to name names either, but terrible. I mean, you know, what was that process like? Especially because you're not like a trained chef, or, you know, you worked in the restaurant business, but like, how did you learn so much about coffee and how to make coffee and where to source coffee? You know, you don't have to tell us your source, but
no, I mean,
I'd be like the empanada.
For coffee, you know, there's a lot of resources in this day and age. You know, the Specialty Coffee Association, Specialty Coffee Institute. It's over time, like just, you know, being in these conferences, going to these classes, and then now, when we started Makers, I knew specialty coffee is more of a lighter kind of roast.
Yeah.
So the flavors are very robust.
Mhm.
And so most people are used to like the dark coffee, like the bold, right?
Yeah,
That word,
Starbucks.
bold. Yeah.
Almost burnt tasting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I knew that specialty coffee, if we did completely like light roast in 2014, I felt like it was a little it wasn't approachable enough. So
Okay.
my focus was right in the middle of those two. Instead of
Makes
dark
sense.
and burnt, let's go for like a nice medium roast that you can
Yep.
still taste these flavors in. So that was our motivation when we were sourcing, right?
Okay.
It's like, how do we find a roaster that can roast the profile that we want? And so that's what we ended up finding a roaster that we worked with out of Texas for a while, and then
Okay.
Arizona, and then as of a year and a half ago, now we have our own roastery
Wow.
in Chinatown. So we roast our own coffee. So now we've pivoted from sourcing roasted coffee to sourcing green coffee.
Interesting.
Which is a whole nother
ball game.
Yeah.
And the prices fluctuate a lot, right, on coffee?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's a commodity, so it's
Yeah.
like it's very much dependent on the rest of the global market and how these countries are producing, and there's a lot of variables that come into play with
Weather, right?
COVID.
Oh, yeah.
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 So-
Did that affect you guys from that perspective?
I mean, it's affected anything that we have to source.
Yeah.
Because distribution channels are
Or a mess,
just a
yeah.
mess. Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
So how did the name come up, Makers and Finders?
That's it. So we were gonna name. I just kind of New York was. I told you earlier in this conversation, like growing up there, that move was a really big impact on my
Sure.
life. So I was still very much driven on this whole urban concept, and I had just read this book, Triumph of the City by Edward Glaeser, and that's all he spoke about. It's like the beauty of like the urbanization of our country and how it's taken us to where we are now, right?
Yeah.
And so so at the time I was in that whole mind frame. We were gonna name the coffee shop Van Wyck Coffee because I grew up in Queens, close to the Van Wyck Expressway, and I just fond memories in my mind, going through the bridge, picking up my dad in the middle of the night from work, and like just seeing it. So I'm like, hey, I like the ring of it. I think it's great. But before I'm like, I wasn't convinced. I'm like, let me do some research on who Van Wyck was. Frankly, I didn't know who he was.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was like, let me do some research and figure out before I name my coffee shop after this guy.
And what would the research uncover?
So, turn of the century, like a lot of stuff for like public education, did a lot of stuff for the city of New York. Kind of boring, not really intrigued. I mean, great stuff, but to me, it didn't really pique my interest.
Yeah.
But then, like the next famous Van Wyck was this guy, by the name Van Wyck Brooks. A little bit more excited, kind of mid-century, post World War II, kind of like economist, like thinker, like capitalist thinker, like really much like preaching that American dream and riding that high from like, the mid-century.
Yeah.
So he wrote this series of articles called Makers and Finders. And and I started reading them and I'm like,
It's a cool name though. I like it. Yeah.
And for me, a big part of it was I knew that it was going to be like a Latin cafe, but I was really keen on I didn't want you to know it was a Latin cafe.
Yeah, because you don't feel that immediately when you go in. Yeah.
Yeah, then that was very much the goal. Like, every time I go to these authentic places, right?
Yeah.
It's great, but it's a little like the language barrier, the menu barriers. You'll go, but you won't frequent it, right? It's just like every now and again you'll go to this hole in the wall because it's so good.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. Like I wanted to be approachable. I wanted it to be easy to navigate. I wanted it to be cultural food, but you in a space that just feels like nondescript, like eclectic, kind of a little bit of everything. And so that was the goal. Like, so I'm glad that you caught that because I didn't want you to know what Makers and Finders was or is until you're sitting down and enjoying it.
Exactly. It wasn't like you walk into like a Greek restaurant, it's like blue and white and you got, like the Parthenon in the back,
Right.
which is cool. I think you can feel when you go in there that it's like, it's like, eclectic mix of experiences, right? Or life experiences, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So, when you were starting out, how long did it take you to kind of really see the momentum? Because obviously downtown went through a really big transition. I don't know when Tony Hsieh started investing or what the year was, but it wasn't that long before, right? Or right around that time?
No, so a little funny story about that. So it was not just Triumph of the City, but also my book at the time that inspired me to do a lot of this, but also Delivering Happiness from Tony Hsieh, right? And so 2012 was like when the downtown project started, and back then it was, that startup fund was actually available to anyone who wanted to like submit a video. I think that was like, there were some requirements, and a video was one of them, of like who you are. So same thing, like, we made this.
Oh, did you do it?
Yeah.
It's funny to watch that now, right?
Oh, I just watched it like a month ago. Did you? I mean, it's just funny because it was just this corny, like, but it was fun. Like it was a good time. But we did try to, we had a meeting with Downtown Project early on before we opened Makers. And, things didn't work out, but definitely a huge part of why, we were able to grow is because we had this person and this company who believed in this area and who believed in the idea of like this urbanization of downtown.
Yeah. Because when you were there, I mean, at that year, there was not much there, right? I mean,
unless you count, panhandlers and
well, they're still there.
Yeah, they're still there. Sometimes they seem like there are more of them now too, man. They're getting,
Yeah, so it's even ballsier that you guys chose that location, I think. What motivated? It was the urbanization. That's kind of what drove you to downtown?
Originally we wanted Fremont, right? Yeah. Because that was
traffic and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was all the vibes back then. It was Fremont East. And we just were having no luck, pricing wise. It was impossible for us to be able to fit into that. And then that's when I had heard about like Velveteen Rap. Velveteen Rap is like the first spot in this new wave of arts district. And so I'm like, hey, I went in there and I like instantly loved it, the neighborhood. Yeah. And I'm like, this is it. Spot. This is it. Like, this is gonna pop. Like, and I can see this popping because Velveteen was packed. And then I'd go to Casa Don Juan and like I'd see their lunch rushes. I'm like, dude, this place is packed. Like, there's something here. It's just, it takes numbers. It takes more of us. Yeah. And so when one night at Velveteen Rabbit, had a few cocktails, go out to the street, start poking my head, looking through these dark rooms, and I found this spot, put my head in there, and I'm like, this looks good. And then a couple days later I call, and then the rest is history. Like,
and it's pretty expensive, right, to do the build out downtown because things are older, isn't it? Or was the timing right when you guys got in?
Timing was right as far as like the cost of leasing. Okay, because now it's like tripled.
Oh, I'm sure,
quadrupled. Yeah. Back then we were on cents. You know what I mean?
So hopefully you locked that in for.
We locked that in as long as we could. Trust me. And so it was really affordable in that sense. But as far as the build out goes, we didn't have too many like crazy problems. But you're right about the infrastructure. Like downtowns. Yep. Right now we're still dealing with a lot of these issues. But the build out itself, I mean, we kept it as bare bones as possible. Yeah. Luckily there weren't any real, tough hiccups, because I know there's some people in the neighborhood who, recently took a year, 2 years to open because of like some weird infrastructure issues, like underground problems. Yep. Luckily we didn't have any of that. There was a furniture store in between us. The most that we had to deal with is a completely unleveled ground, a foundation. But I mean, there are bigger problems than that.
So, So did you design the whole road? Was that your vision, like the design and everything?
Yeah, for the most part. Kind of like, a lot of Pinterest, a lot of like looking around and just like piecing it in my head together, and then, continuing to add on more and more as time passed. And most recently we just redid our brought in our hallway now in the Arts District. Is completely revamped top to bottom by an artist named Pretty Dunn.
Oh, cool.
And he's great. He's got like this Keith Haring kind of vibe, and I'm like, oh, like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm a big like Tribe Called Quest, Wu-Tang.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
love like, you know, that golden era of like
Yeah.
hip hop. So I wanted to bring some of that in, and so yeah, like the design is very much like eclectic. I wanted art. I wanted, you know, these wood accents, but also a very clean and open kind of like bright space, and like where we focus on like the lighting and the music is a big part. Like we want to
Sure.
have like really unique people, believe it or not, like they're always like, oh, I love makers because of the music. Like,
Yeah.
I want to hear that. That
Yeah.
to me is like,
It's the atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
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 That's awesome. So tell me about the early days of when you guys first opened. I mean, or day one. I mean, because there's a lot you got to learn, right? Like not only just hiring and managing, but you're not a chef, so like you got to train I don't know how you train the kitchen staff and stuff like that. But and then even things like food costs, and you know, how did you battle through all those challenges as a new restaurant operator?
You know, I'm 6 years in and I'm still battling with some of these things just because
Yeah.
it's such a, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot, and there's the restaurants. It's a lot. There's a lot of different ways to bleed in restaurants
Oh,
and
yeah.
lose money rather easily. So, yeah, those first few weeks, we did have a private investor who is a chef.
Yep.
So we were able to, we kind of described the vision, like the skeleton of what we wanted the menu to look like.
Okay.
We built it, and then he designed recipes
Oh, wow.
for a commercial kitchen.
Very cool. Did he design the kitchen layout and stuff, or work with you guys on that?
Somewhat, yeah.
Okay.
Somewhat. But
Yeah.
you know,
That's where the mistakes came in.
oh my gosh. I mean, we didn't have
Yeah.
a walk-in.
Oh wow.
No,
Okay.
I'm like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, we just have like a bunch of these reach-in coolers, and
Yeah.
we'll be good. And I mean, that's a lie. You
Yeah,
know,
I'm sure
that's-
all those things you learned though in your second location were
Yeah.
resolved. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you open up the second one? That's super exciting.
Yeah, December 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, we signed the lease. It was September 1st, but it was a second generation spot, so there was a hood already, and a lot of it was, you know, already there, so it was more like a renovation.
Okay.
So we were able to flip that space in 3.5 months.
And that's at downtown Summerlin.
That's in downtown Summerlin, right in the mix, right down the Macy's Promenade next to Lush, across from Erla Sandwich. So,
Cool.
yeah, it was that was a big risk. for
Different
sure.
type of risk, right? Because you got the Summerlin rent.
I had a bunch of people because it was a second generation spot.
Yeah.
So I had, you know, there was another restaurant business who failed before me.
Sure.
There.
Yeah.
But I wanted highest risk, highest reward, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I can. We almost got into a deal in 2016 to open up before Summerlin our second location in Water Street, downtown Henderson,
Yeah.
which now it's kind of experienced a resurgence. It's
With
experiencing a
the
resurgence.
Raiders down there, right? And,
Right.
Yeah.
But back then I was like, man, I've already done the build the neighborhood up with Main Street.
Yeah.
I don't want to build a neighborhood. I just want to go in there
It's
and
a good
rock
move.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we pivoted to downtown Summerlin, and yeah, these crazy rents and, you know, all these risks. But thankfully, like we did a good job with the design, and, you know, people gravitated, and we got a good reception at downtown Summerlin. And now it feels like, man, we're just part of that community now, you know?
Now, I mean, downtown Vegas is very different than downtown Summerlin, right? The word downtown shouldn't even be in there, probably.
I know.
You know, is the because I haven't been in that location yet, but is the vibe and the style, the menu, is it all the same, or is it a little bit different?
Menu's all the same. The beverage menu, beer, wine, and cocktails are different.
Okay.
But we still push out, you know, nearly identical food menu, mimosas, all that good stuff that people love us for.
Yeah.
The space is a little different. It's a newer space, so
Yeah.
I feel like the arts district has like a charm to it. 'Cause
Sure.
it's like an older
Yeah.
building, whereas this one's a little just brighter and open. But, you know, people still love the space. Like they come in, they're like,
Yeah.
oh wow, this is
Well, it's a different clientele out there too.
yeah.
So they're probably more used to all the new stuff. you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm throwing like these art, like I just did that Pretty Done ceiling, and it looks like the freaking Sistine Chapel. Like,
Oh, cool.
yeah, it's like all up, and people are just
Checking
some
it
of the
out.
people are like intrigued by
Oh, yeah.
that vibe. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
Which is cool to see. Like, you know, even though, you know, it's a newer neighborhood, suburbs, like they still want that like creative energy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and that cultural experience.
Of course. And a lot of people in Summerlin, I mean, it's a higher income area. They travel a lot. So they've seen places like that, other places. But Vegas is
Exactly.
different, you know?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of, I mean, it's like you were like one of the first people to have like let's call it craft coffee. I don't know what the term would be for location. And now you see, you know, other ones like Bad Owl popping up, and which, you know, are you guys? Is there like a little coffee community where you guys all know each other?
I think
you know how
I think that's more into between the staffs and the teams. Like I know that there's a lot of synergy in that route. I mean, with the owners of all these independent, I mean, it's like, you know, I think we're just busy people. We don't. I don't think that there's like a community per se, but the coffee community amongst like the baristas and like the coffee lovers, that's a huge community. And you know, I was just talking to somebody this morning who just moved here, and they're just like, man, there's such a big coffee community.
Oh yeah, it wasn't like that.
It wasn't like that 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that's big. I remember seeing a headline. It was like 2018. I think it was like 19 independent coffee shops open in 1 year.
Wow.
And now it's you know, we're almost a coffee town. Like it's such a strong. We have such a strong presence here. But we were one of the first ones in the craft coffee scene. Like you said.
I just made up a term.
Spot on.
So tell me about the new business. So Take It Easy.
Yeah.
So that's another whole other area. You moved into Chinatown.
Yeah.
So you love taking all these risks in different areas, right? You got downtown, Summerlin, and then Chinatown.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that concept in that venue.
Yeah. So, you know, there was like a big void left with Makers and Finders because, like I told you earlier, when we were designing the menu, we had to make it approachable. Like it has to be something that you can do over and over again, multiple times a week. So there's a lot of items and things that are very dear to me, but I was not, it didn't fit the Makers and Finders brand and our style of service. So, you know, it just always kind of stayed in my head. Like I want to do a Colombian style bakery. I wanted, and then at the time, you know, I was kind of, you know, after Summerlin, after the Arts District, I wanted something for myself.
It's like a passion project more.
It is. It is. Yeah. And like, if you go in there, you know, we designed this collage on our dining room wall in Take It Easy. It's this collage of memories of all, you know, I pulled 20 different photos from different family members, got them like digitally enhanced, bought all these, you know, these contrasting frames, and did like this little canvas, you know, of like memories for my life and for my family and stuff. So it was a very much like passion family project.
Very cool.
And it means a lot to me because, you know, that was always what my parents wanted. They're like, we want a Colombian bakery, like these cheese
That's so
breads.
cool. Yeah.
And so that was the motivation behind Take It Easy.
And is your family involved in the business? Like you mentioned, your mom was helping out too.
Yeah, my mom's like a managing partner. She handles all the admin, HR, legal. Okay. You know, my dad, he's retired, but he's
drinking the coffee.
He's the guy who loves to go eat the breads. He loves his mimosas. They pack him up his mimosas, and they're like, and he's like, that's my dad's like very much
the mascot of the.
He enjoys the simpler things in life, whereas my mom is more of like, she is involved in the business. And really is a backbone for us.
That's awesome. Yeah. So where do you see the business going in the future? Like, are you guys looking to expand, like franchise out, like keep it small, like the 3 stores? You don't seem like a guy that's going to stop.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely don't want to stop. We just opened our Area 15 location. It's a kiosk. Yeah. So
cool.
we built this kiosk out. It's this beautiful, you know, piece of equipment that has its own water system and all this, built for an espresso bar. So we were able to lock in a partnership with Area 15 in June. We opened up, and man, I mean, I don't know if you've been there yet.
I haven't. I've heard great things though. I heard
it's
cool.
To.
Yeah.
It's super cool, super unique. And so we were able to get in there in June, and right off the bat, it's just so busy.
That's
so
awesome.
busy. Yeah.
So you're going to do more of those kiosks, you think, or?
I think so. I think that might be in the future. You know, I wanna venture outside of Las Vegas too.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I want to take Makers, because to me, it's more than just, you know, the business. It's also like, hey, I'm bringing my culture with me.
Sure.
Like, this is a representation of who we are as people, and I want to spread that more.
You look at, it's funny you say that, because you look at a lot of successful businesses and they build, like Red Bull's, I always use that as a perfect example. If you go to their site, they don't even talk about their energy drink. It's all about the X Games and things they sponsor, and you know what I mean? Like, but they built a community, and that's really important with any business, is like, almost like, it says who you are and who you hang with, and I think that's pretty cool. You're trying to expand upon that,
Yeah,
it creates loyalty,
for sure.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of our voice brand, our brand voice. Like, is like in the name too, makers and finders, movers and shakers, like that whole hustlers mentality, and even in our cups and our branding, like, once again, East Coast rap, big fan. I took a line from, one of my favorite rappers, Biggie, and he's like, sicker than your average. And because that's how I feel, and that's how a lot of us feel who are in this, like, when you're in this hustler's mindset, it's a really isolated thing. Like, you're a people person, you can navigate those waters, but you're also very much in your head. Yeah. And so I feel like putting that on these cups really spoke to people who are like, no, I'm doing it. I'm out here pursuing it. And so, like, just building up on that voice has been very helpful for makers, because, like you said, it's starting to build a community. Yeah. It's starting to build, like, this loyalty to not just the restaurant, it's what we represent. And that aligns, I think, with a lot of different people. Yeah.
And I saw in another podcast you're on that you built an app or something, like a loyalty program app.
Yeah, it's not a like a native app, but it's like through a third party company. We built this. This was right before COVID happened. We were already developing it, and just ordering system, loyalty points. Just a way to stay engaged with 80% of people who are using their phones all the time. Yeah, and so we were able to get that launched right during the shutdown. Yeah, we called the developers. We're like, hey man, we need to get launch this going. Yeah. And you need to add a curbside option. Yeah. And we were able to do that. And it's been great. I mean, I think we're at like a few thousand downloads. I'm like, I feel like that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. So tell me, let's talk about the shutdown, because obviously that was Vegas got hit harder than most places. Yeah. What was it like mid-March when that happened? What was going through your mind? What changes did you make? Did you not panic and kind of let it run its course, or like, tell me about that experience?
That was, I mean, for a lot of people, and not just restaurants. I mean, that initial shock was just like numbness. But soon after that, I'm like, no, well, I got to do something. Yeah. Like, and kind of fitting to what we represent, once again, makers of that hustler spirit, right? Yeah, yeah. That American dream, that pursuit. I'm like, well, I think what we need to do is stay active. Like, I'm saying this, right? And I'm standing outside on the sidewalk in the arts district, and I'm seeing them boarding up. I'm seeing them boarding up. Yeah. And I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Yeah. Like, I didn't come here to do this. Like, and I don't mean that irresponsibly. I just mean that, like, look, we serve our community, like food, beverage. Like, some people, rely on restaurants to eat and survive. Yeah. And, I saw the whole community boarding up, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. Yeah. And so early on, so we closed the day that the shutdown happened, right? We closed for 2 days. And in those 2 days, we said, we're not closing. We're going to go back to roots, right? Which we have a lot of experience in pop-up espresso bars. Like, we did this kiosk now. We know how to operate an espresso machine in a mobile kind of format.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So we're like, we're going to post up on the sidewalk. Yeah. A lemonade stand. I'm like, we're going to make lemonade right now. Yeah. Yeah. Except coffee. But, and so we just posted up on the sidewalk. Every morning we were out there, in the first 2 weeks, it was like, man, what are we doing? Like, everyone's boarded up. No, we were hardly any business. Sure. And then, like, week 3, it started
popping. Really?
And then we started getting hit. Fire department 20 deep, bicycle crew 20 deep.
Oh, and wow.
People were out, like, outdoors. You know what I'm saying?
So you did all this outside. So the restaurant, was it by law that you had to shut down, or what was
there was no indoor dining.
That's right.
There's no dining. Yes, so there's no dining in. So we were able to, it was a curbside is what they said. So we're like, just like who we are, like, let's stand out. Let's literally post up on the sidewalk.
Curb. Yeah.
I'm like, screw it.
Yeah.
And at first it was kind of weird. I'm not gonna lie. And there was a lot of doubt with that, but then they started coming. Yeah. And they're like, no, we love this. Like, this is a little sense of normalcy. Like,
Yeah.
we can hang out. And then they started hanging out on the sidewalks, like socially distanced, outdoors. And we were doing that for the month and a half, 2 months.
Did you do food too, or just the coffee?
So it started with coffee and pastries, but then we started seeing the growth, and then we started bringing in food.
Okay.
And then we uploaded all our menu to the app, so people are ordering from the app, picking up curbside. They notified us. We brought it straight to their car.
Mm-hmm.
And then sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah. So we were setting up. And then we set up brunch packages. So what I kept seeing was, during this shutdown, it was really, a lot of people, it was good for a lot of people because you actually had time, like, to be mindful, like,
sure,
and spend some time outdoors. So we started seeing, like, these groups of, like, these couples coming in, grabbing food and coffee, and then going, posting up in their car, opening up the trunk and just eating it there.
Yeah.
And so we're like, man, we should do, like, these, like, brunch packages. And so we launched we launched it in the middle of the shutdown and offered, like, for 2, for 4, for 6 people. We did, like, steak and eggs. You can buy, and then the city was able to do, like, a temporary curbside alcohol option. So we were selling bottles of mimosas and our flavors added on, and and that was a huge success. And now we still do brunch packages to this day.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
it's so cool because my business partner in Quotable, he like I said, he runs VegasForward. And he's super creative. And I think a lot of people have that entrepreneurial mindset, just, your back's against the wall. You have no choice. You just have to figure it out, and, people weren't, the store was shut down, the dealership. So he took a van. Nobody was able to come down there, took a van, slapped God and Go on the side and made a mobile, like, we'll sell you a car anywhere. He was just driving around. That's awesome. But it was featured in automotive news and, like, really, and I think that's what's unique about people like you is that, like, you won't give up, and you just got to find the way, scratching, clawing to figure it out. And there's a lot of ups and downs in owning a business. It doesn't matter what business it is. I feel like they're all the same, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, it's about making people happy, creating relationships, and it's just you got to stay like this. There's highs, there's lows, and it's tough to battle through.
100, 1,000%. Yeah, it's demoralizing at times.
It is.
And you gotta, like, pick yourself up in pieces and just be like, I'm gonna do this again.
Because
tomorrow.
People depend on you. You have a staff, and they have families, and so it's a lot to carry. A lot sometimes. And I felt the same way during the shutdowns. It was like, real big highs and lows, and, like, not a lot of highs actually, but you just battle through it.
Small victories, man. They're huge.
Yeah,
they're what keep you sane. I
so
think.
Were you with the staff? I mean, you had to furlough some people, or, like, is that
yeah? We laid off, like, 85% of our team, unfortunately. But before we closed down, we had all this food and perishable products, so we invited all of our teams at both locations. Like, hey, we're giving out bread, eggs, so we're able to get rid of all the perishables, give it back to our staff. Yeah, help them navigate. Excuse me. Yeah. Help them navigate the unemployment. We were really, focused on, like, helping them stay afloat too, while we tried to stay afloat. And then, we maintained that even through COVID, giving them resources for free testing. We did mobile testing where we had vendors come to our shop, test our team. But that was a tough time.
Yeah, I think that was the hardest thing too. I had to do the same. I mean, everyone had to, right? Because, I tried to make a few payrolls, and I was like, it can't keep doing it, because there's no incoming business, right. So it was one of the things I'm most proud of is I never had to fire someone because of economic reasons, and it was kind of tough to even furlough people. And my staff is back, and we've actually grown, which is awesome, but it was scary. I mean, just for everyone at that time, it's just weird.
No, yeah, and then there's big decisions to make, and you have to make them. Yep. And it's really tough, but. And I'm glad to see things kind of
coming back.
Yeah, for sure. And that's important too, especially for Vegas.
Yeah. And you guys probably you learned a lot, right? I mean, innovations came out of you, of the brunch thing you're doing now. And, what were your revenue levels like? I mean, was it like 10% or like, what was it?
It was abysmal. It was first month was like 8% and then like 10,
What was the highest you got up to, would you say?
It was like 15%.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
which was pretty good. I'm like, man,
better than
it's
nothing.
not bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
Something.
bad, but it was rough, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Vegas a little bit. You know, we'll get off that topic. It's depressing.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. But it's cool to hear, you know, like the fact you just battled through it, man. I think that's kudos to you. It's tough. So, you know, like Vegas in general, like where do you see the city going? What do you love about living here? And, you know, what attracts you to the city?
Yeah. I think it's a really like nascent city. It still has so much growth.
Yeah.
Not just in population, but you know, like the cultural blueprint.
Sure.
I think that's what makes it so attractive to me as a young entrepreneur, and a lot of young entrepreneurs or young people who want to, you know, grow in their lives. Is there's a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah.
And I love that part about Vegas and it's a hospitality driven city, which is what I love.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, like this is, you know, not to sound cliched, but I feel like this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
And I do think that, you know, as bad as COVID was, I do think that we're already kind of seeing a little bit of this, but the resurgence, especially in Las Vegas, it's going to be extreme. And I say that because, you know, I feel like there's a lot of parallels to like, you know, and this is something that you know, a lot of people have said too. It's like the Roaring '20s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I do think that is something, you know, the living life and appreciating life and going out there and entertainment and travel. I really think those are going to be.
Well, summer's usually slow and the strip was jammed.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah. So.
And I don't think that's going to change much.
I don't think so.
You know, you know, I don't think it's going to change. So that to me, it's exciting because typically Vegas, you know, Vegas is such a global city too.
Oh yeah.
You know, we attract people from all over the world and we're world class in a lot of things. You know, people just see it as a playground, but really it's a playground because we execute this damn city so well.
Oh, when you travel other places, even when I go back east, I used to be impressed with the service.
Yeah.
There's nothing like this town.
No,
not
we're
even
the
close.
best.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go back, you go anywhere, LA, you're like, God, this is shit.
Yeah.
Like they don't know what.
Yeah.
But Vegas is a world-class city.
Yeah.
So I think that just like, you know, as the world changed so quickly and abruptly with all this, Vegas is going to change too.
I agree. Yeah, it's different. And it's a different town than it was when I moved here in 2002 and it was nothing but the strip. Yeah. I mean, downtown was like an afterthought. It was just hotels and that's all there was. And now you have sports teams and entertainment stuff like Area 15, you know, shopping centers. I mean, there's real infrastructure. When before it was like everyone relied solely on the city, and that's how everyone worked. Right. Everyone worked for a casino, and now it's. I hear that less and less. Right. You know, and you see a lot of chefs like Brian Howard. You mentioned that you know, work on the strip and then open up their own spots, and there's just so much great food and things to do. You know?
No, for sure.
So, what are some things you like to do outside of work? Are you working 7 days a week? Or?
You know, that's been my schedule for these last few months because of, you know, everything going on now in the job market. Yeah. But, you know, typically I'm a homebody too. Like I like to go out, but I'm always out for work. So like I like to just go home and chill. Yeah. But no, I mean, I love going out to restaurants. Actually, yesterday I just went to this new spot. I loved it so much. I'll plug it because the chef came out, even said hi. He was great. You could just see his passion. Garlic yuzu, which is I've heard of that one. Yeah. Up in Southwest by my hood. Yeah. And man, what a great solid menu, fresh ingredients. And just well executed, cool, intimate spot. Yeah. And so like trying new restaurants. I love doing that.
Have you been to Edo? EDO? Yes. That place. Same kind of thing. I was super impressed. I took my wife and I went on a date and escaped the children and went there. And it was rare that you in Vegas even that you see the owner there or that, you know, how welcome there. That was one thing about the East Coast that every restaurant owner, the owner was like,
they live there.
Yeah, they live there. Yeah, and it was kind of unique to see that. I thought, and in that place, the execution was great. Yeah. You know,
that spot's great too.
Yeah,
man.
It's a good spot. It's tiny though. It's hard to get a
super tiny
spot. I've called like 3 times and never get in.
Yeah,
so.
They're probably gonna grow eventually. They're busy. I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. But yeah, there's always new stuff popping up, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So.
Even in the arts district, man, like I can't even keep track. I'm like, yeah. I haven't been to like half the places in my own, in your own neighborhood. No, because the pace that they're opening up is like fast, really fast paced moving. And so it's great. There's always something new to do in Vegas, right?
Yeah.
I haven't even been to Resorts World yet.
I went once.
Yeah.
It was all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The venues are cool, but it kind of felt like, parts of it felt like you're in a mall almost. I don't know. It was just my vibe, but.
When I went to Macau a few years ago, which is like a weird kind of like Vegas redheaded, cousin.
Yeah.
And like that's the vibe. Like I think because I think Resorts World is like more like an Asian kind of.
It's supposed to be. You don't feel like when you go into the wind, there's like a vibe.
Yeah.
When I walked in, I was like, I didn't feel anything. It didn't have that like.
Yeah.
This is what it is, or this is what I feel. It was different. I didn't spend enough time there, but it was okay.
Yeah. I got to check it out.
Yeah.
They have a lot of restaurants.
The restaurants are supposed to be awesome. Yeah. They're actually building. I think Sean Christie's building like a 14,000 square foot like multi-level steakhouse there or something like that. Yeah.
Is that?
He used to. I used to work for him actually. He used to be a partner in Light Group.
Gotcha.
Oh, back in the day. Yeah. Which I think Hakkasan got him. That's how old I am. Is that the company I work for doesn't even exist anymore.
And I think Tao got Hakkasan. They bought him out.
Yeah.
Now it's all Tao.
Yep. So cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming down. Tell everyone where they can find you and tell us a little bit more about.
Yeah. And I appreciate you guys having me. So more about Makers and Finders on our website, makerslv.com. We love social media, Instagram, TikTok @makerslv. We have the 3 locations for Makers and Finders: the Arts District, downtown Summerlin, and at Area 15, and next to across from Wild Muse Boutique. And then our sister location, sister concept, Take It Easy Roasters. That's in Chinatown. It's a tucked away little hidden gem.
Out.
It's a little hidden gem. You gotta do a little scavenger hunt to find it. But once you find it, I promise you, it's unlike anything else that Vegas has to offer. And find out more about them on takeiteasyroasters.com, @takeiteasyroasters on social media.
Awesome, man. Well, you're super inspiring story. I mean, from your childhood and your upbringing to all the things you've accomplished, and you're a young dude, so you got a lot more to do. So it was awesome meeting you, and
I appreciate it.
Appreciate you having on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.